Honourable guests and ladies and gentlemen, I have only 10 minutes, so I'm going to start straight away. I'll be talking about the limitations and exceptions for libraries, archives and education. To fulfill their mission in the 21st century, libraries and archives must engage in a wide variety of activities, including collection development, cataloguing, lending, preservation and replacement, production of accessible format copies and provision of e-resources. Academic and even some school libraries are now embedded in the core teaching programs of their institutions. They support research, education and innovation. Library services include teaching, literacy programs, research support, data management and copyright awareness training. Legal deposit libraries and official publications depositories are mandated by the Legal Deposit Act to collect, catalogue, make accessible and preserve our cultural heritage for future generations. Libraries don't only house collections of printed works. They provide access to online journals and e-books, multimedia, Africana and archival treasures. They are custodians, users and publishers of knowledge. Libraries and archives provide services to meet the information needs of our people for various purposes, including personal and socio-economic development, career development, political, security, health, civic and many other activities. Libraries promote authors and publishers by purchasing and collecting their works, cataloguing them to make them accessible, exhibiting them, promoting new authors, and preserving their works for perpetuity at considerable cost. Without libraries and archives, they would not be able to innovate and create new works. Our current copyright law dates back to 1978 and is completely inadequate, outdated, and irrelevant in a digital world. It has been a barrier to access to information for far too long. The educational and library sectors have been calling for amendment to the law since 1998 and 2000, when they persuaded the government to stop more restrictive amendments being passed. I therefore commend the DTI for its new 2017 Copyright Amendment Bill. It is good to see that South Africa, who has strongly supported the Africa Group proposals for a WIPO treaty on limitations and exceptions for libraries, archives, education, research, and for persons with disabilities, has seen it fit to include such provisions in this bill. Apart from it taking cognizance of existing international conventions and treaties, those currently before WIPO and foreign laws, it draws on our Constitution and the excellent EIFEL model copyright law, which expands on WIPO's model copyright law for developing countries. It also implements the 2015 Cape Town Declaration principles signed by South Africa and 12 other African countries, which include the commitment to encourage the implementation of fair and balanced copyright laws to facilitate access to information for all. It acknowledges we are a sovereign state with unique domestic challenges which can be addressed through wider access to information, education, and socio-economic development. It should be noted that the laws of many other countries already have similar or more exceptions than we have as a developing country. These are permitted in international treaties, but South Africa has been tardy in amending the law to accommodate these benefits for our nation. I am therefore pleased to see the new bill includes provisions for libraries, including legal deposit libraries, archives, museums, and galleries. These flexibilities will enable these key institutions in the chain of knowledge collection, sharing, and preservation to carry out their statutory mandates and provide their services efficiently and effectively to our developing nation within a digital world. The exceptions permitting digitization, format shifting, interlibrary and repository sharing and preservation will ensure accessibility to all collections and our cultural heritage for future generations. The limitations and exceptions relating to education and academic activities are also very welcome and will help to transform research, teaching and learning at the school and tertiary levels. The bill will also enable educational institutions to provide adequate and relevant research and educational material for academic students and school children from various international and local resources, something our current law has stymied. Most of these resources come from their own library collections, already paid for via highly priced books or expensive subscriptions, or licensed digital content for which academic libraries currently pay more than 600 million rand annually to mainly international conglomerates. They then have to buy back their own academics' works or pay for duplicate titles in more than one database because of how they are packaged. They also pay double in many instances when material is downloaded from those databases for use in course packs or on closed access e-learning platforms. Millions of rands are also spent annually on reprographic licenses for teaching material. As the use of digital resources increases, so the need for photocopied material will naturally decrease. Any funds that are not spent on reprographic licenses will then become available to purchase new books, journals, multimedia, and a range of electronic resources, which should please publishers and authors. Universities will continue to use licensed content to ensure access to information for their users via their library services. I also applaud the DTI for including provisions for people with various disabilities, something that our current law failed to do. Once the DTI ratifies the Marrakesh Treaty, this will also enable reciprocal cross-border sharing of accessible formats. These provisions will bring South Africa in line with copyright laws in many developed countries. The making available of accessible formats will open up a whole new business opportunity for South African publishers and authors. The International Federation of Library and Institutions, IFLA, representing 150 countries and a number of other international and local organizations, as well as the Department of Arts and Culture, support the provisions for libraries, archives, museums and galleries, education and research, and for persons with disabilities in the bill. They have commended the DTI on a progressive and practical bill which could serve as a precedent for other developing and developed countries. There are, however, a few necessary changes that the educational and library sectors would hope to see in the bill before it is finalised. These have been submitted to the Portfolio Committee, but I will mention just a few. The introduction of fair use provisions is welcomed, bringing South African copyright law in line with a number of countries that have adopted fair use. However, the provisions need to be open. Copyright regimes are naturally moving away from closed fair dealing provisions to more open fair use provisions to address ever-changing technologies, transformative uses, text and data mining, new innovations, artificial intelligence, and unforeseen uses in the future. There is no empirical evidence in the US or elsewhere that shows that fair use destroys creative industries, just as the photocopier, the videotape, and remixers have not destroyed the creative industries. Creative people will always find new ways of creating and selling their works. In fact, the Computer and Communications Industry Association's 2017 report confirms that fair use contributes trillions of dollars to the US economy each year. Every author, musician, filmmaker, scriptwriter, lawyer, researcher, student, educator, in fact everyone who needs to develop or change his or her life, or impact on others' lives, or want to innovate or create new works, or use others' works to achieve their goals, needs access to information. Libraries and archives play a crucial role in ensuring accessibility and preservation of knowledge. As Prof. Jazzy from the American University says, everyone who makes culture or participates in the innovation economy relies on fair use routinely, whether they recognize it or not. Our current copyright law has always been nebulous and open to variant interpretations. Open fair use provisions will give more clarity to authors, creators, educators, and other users of information as to what would be fair to use or not. Fair use is not carte blanche copying of anything and everything. The four determining factors, together with judicial processes, will ensure more fairness when using other people's works. South Africa will develop its own jurisprudence and precedents as issues arise, just as jurisprudence is being developed around constitutional issues. Due to the introduction of a comma, perhaps inadvertent, the quotation provision is now limited and totally impractical in comparison with our current Copyright Act and the 2015 Amendment Bill. The comma needs to be deleted, otherwise everyone who needs to quote from any source will need permission each time. The provision of orphan works are totally impractical, expensive, and would render orphan works inaccessible forever. Libraries, archives, and museums house orphan works in all different formats. Material needs to be used when required, not months later. State ownership of mostly international works is not advisable, nor is state fund to collect monies. Who will receive the money if rights owners no longer exploit their works, are untraceable, or don't exist anymore? Open fair use would be the obvious solution, applying the 4 factors to enable valuable works to be used, shared, or reused to create new works for the good of society. Similarly, copyright on at least unpublished South African works should be subject to the same term of protection as published works to ensure our cultural heritage is made accessible and preserved for perpetuity. Australia has just passed a law making all unpublished works subject to the same copyright term as published works. Authors, creators, researchers, educators, librarians, etc. need a rich, vibrant public domain and appropriate limitations exceptions to be innovative, to quote from other sources, to use and share existing works, also to create new works and contribute to new knowledge, our cultural heritage, and ultimately our economy and social transformation. That is what a well-balanced copyright law does, and we look forward to this in the near future. Thank you.